What if we told you that in the early 1930s, movies pushed boundaries so far that audiences gasped, critics raged, and entire cities tried to shut the theaters down? Welcome to the scandalous world of pre-code Hollywood, a time when film studios dared to show what others only whispered about. Tonight, we're diving into 10 moments so shocking they changed the course of movie history forever. Barbara Stanwyck's bath scene and ruthless ambition in Babyface, 1933. Our countdown begins with a film that pushed every boundary imaginable and left audiences, censors, and even some filmmakers reeling. Babyface from 1933. Barbara Stanwyck stars as Lily Powers, a woman born into poverty in a small town who, after years of mistreatment and dashed hopes, decides to leave her old life behind and head to the big city. What follows is one of the most provocative journeys of the pre-code era, with Lily using her intelligence, charm, and sheer determination to climb the ranks of a major bank. The most notorious moment, one that drew gasps from 1930s moviegoers, features Lily preparing for a bath. While the scene would barely cause a stir today, at the time it was seen as utterly daring. Audiences had rarely, if ever, witnessed a leading lady preparing to bathe on screen, with the camera capturing Stanwyck in a way that left little to the imagination by the standards of the era. This wasn't just about the physical act, it was about the new kind of woman Lily represented, self-sufficient, bold, and unwilling to let anyone stand in her way. But Babyface was about far more than just a single scene. The entire film is laced with themes of empowerment and manipulation. Lily, under the guidance of a wise bartender who quotes Nietzsche, decides to use the very men who have tried to control her as stepping stones. She moves from job to job, office to office, always upward. Her motives clear, her focus unshakable. This unapologetic portrait of ambition and moral ambiguity sent shockwaves through the public and the press. Editorials decried it as corrupting, while others secretly admired the nerve. It was more than just scandalous, it was revolutionary. The outcry led to demands for stricter oversight and is often cited as one of the prime examples of why the infamous Hays Code was so strictly enforced just a year later. Yet, Babyface endures as a bold, dazzling reminder of what Hollywood could be when it dared to challenge society's rules. Mae West's Come Up and See Me, Power in She Done Him Wrong, 1933. Mae West wasn't just a movie star, she was a force of nature, and nowhere is that more apparent than in She Done Him Wrong. The film, adapted from her Broadway play Diamond Lil, features West as Lady Lou, a glamorous, sharp-tongued nightclub singer with an endless parade of admirers and no interest in playing by anyone's rules but her own. What made this film so shocking wasn't just the plot, it was West's attitude. She delivered her lines with a knowing wink and a drawl that could melt glass, making audiences laugh one moment and blush the next. When she famously purred, "Why don't you come up sometime and see me?" the line became an instant catchphrase, with every nuance loaded with suggestion and challenge. It was a direct invitation, teasing, bold, and so unlike the demure women typically seen in earlier Hollywood films. West's Lady Lou didn't simply flirt with men. She outsmarted them, manipulated them, and always came out on top. She was in total command, not just of her own fate, but of every man around her. She toyed with danger, tangled with the law, and faced down rivals without ever losing her sense of humor. For audiences used to women who were either pure angels or tragic victims, Mae West's persona was positively earth-shaking. But that very boldness put West directly in the crosshairs of censors and moral crusaders. Religious leaders and parent groups condemned her films as dangerous, claiming they would lead society astray. Politicians debated banning her movies outright. The public, however, couldn't get enough. She Done Him Wrong became a smash hit, saving Paramount Pictures from bankruptcy and solidifying West's place as the era's most controversial and celebrated star. This film, and West's entire approach, helped fuel the drive for stricter censorship in Hollywood. She represented a new idea of female independence, challenging viewers and the industry alike to reconsider what women could do and say on screen. In short, Mae West didn't just break the rules, she rewrote them, and the outrage that followed was proof of her power. The stark realism of Night Nurse, 1931, and a gritty glimpse at desperation. Pre-code Hollywood didn't shy away from harsh realities, and Night Nurse stands as a prime example of just how far filmmakers were willing to go. Starring Barbara Stanwyck as Laura Hart, a nurse navigating the dangers and intrigues of a big city hospital, the film's plot includes more than just medical emergencies. It delves into crime, addiction, and the vulnerability of the powerless in a world stacked against them. One moment in particular sent audiences and censors into a panic. Laura discovers the tragic aftermath of a woman who, overwhelmed by life's hardships, takes a drastic step to escape her circumstances. The film shows Stanwyck's character grappling with shock and grief in a scene that was raw, real, and utterly unlike the sanitized fare that would follow just a few years later. The emotional intensity was matched by an undercurrent of social critique. The film dared to suggest that life could be bleak, and that the consequences of poverty and despair were not always swept aside with a happy ending. But Night Nurse went further. It openly depicted criminal plots against children, hinted at corruption within the medical establishment, and suggested that sometimes the line between right and wrong wasn't so clear. The film's villain, played by Clark Gable, is chilling not because of over-the-top theatrics, but because of how disturbingly plausible his actions are. Critics accused the movie of glamorizing crime and encouraging audiences to sympathize with questionable choices. Editorials railed against what they called the new realism, warning that such films could only lead to more unrest. Yet, for many viewers, this rawness was precisely what made the film so gripping. It was a bold step away from fairy tales and towards a cinema that reflected the real struggles of ordinary people. Night Nurse is now seen as a pioneering work of social drama, one that paved the way for more nuanced and honest storytelling. But in its own time, it was the subject of fierce debate, and the outrage it sparked helped shape the future of Hollywood's approach to sensitive topics. Madchen in Uniform, 1931, and Forbidden Affection. Imported from Germany at the dawn of the sound era, Madchen in Uniform became an unexpected flashpoint for American audiences. Set in an austere boarding school for girls, the film tells the story of Manuela, a sensitive student who develops deep feelings for her compassionate teacher, Fräulein von Bernburg. Their bond is portrayed with tenderness, honesty, and an absence of ridicule, an approach that was nearly unheard of for the time. When the film was screened in the United States, the reaction was electric. Some critics hailed it as a work of art. Others decried it as dangerous propaganda. The mere suggestion of romantic feelings between two women, handled with empathy and subtlety rather than caricature, was enough to set off a firestorm. Letters poured into studio offices. Religious leaders called for bans. The press seized on the scandalous content, framing the film as a threat to the very fabric of society. What truly made Madchen in Uniform so shocking was its refusal to condemn its characters. Instead of treating Manuela's feelings as a phase or a joke, the film takes her seriously, inviting audiences to understand rather than judge. This approach, both progressive and deeply human, was rare not only in the 1930s, but for decades to come. Censors in several American cities quickly moved to block the film. And even where it was shown, scenes were often cut or heavily edited, yet its legacy endured. Madchen in Uniform remains a landmark in queer cinema, both for its artistry and for the outrage it sparked, a reminder that sometimes the simple act of telling the truth about human emotions can be the most revolutionary gesture of all. Scarface, 1932, and The Shocking World of Crime. When Scarface premiered, audiences had never seen anything quite like it. Paul Mooney stars as Tony Camonte, a ruthless gangster carving his way to the top of Chicago's criminal underworld. The film's violence was so intense that censors delayed its release for months, demanding cuts and changes that would soften its impact. But even in its edited form, Scarface was a revelation and a provocation. The shootouts, betrayals, and family tensions were portrayed with a level of realism and energy that felt almost too real. One particular thread drew even more attention: the strangely close, almost obsessive relationship between Tony and his sister. While the film never crossed explicit lines, the implications were enough to cause a stir, fueling rumors and endless debate. The violence itself was on a scale rarely seen in Hollywood. Machine guns blazed, bodies fell, and no one, not even the innocent, was truly safe. Critics accused the film of glamorizing gangsters, while supporters argued it was a necessary reflection of America's real crime problem. Either way, audiences couldn't look away, and the controversy only fueled ticket sales. Ultimately, Scarface set the template for every crime movie that followed, but it also forced Hollywood to reckon with its own power. The outcry over the film's brutality, moral ambiguity, and subversive undertones contributed directly to the clampdown of the Hays Code, a set of rules that would dominate American movies for decades. Jean Harlow's Red-Headed Woman and the Power of Unrepentant Desire, 1932. Jean Harlow's rise to fame was anything but ordinary. In Red-Headed Woman, she plays Lil, a secretary with ambitions far bigger than her station. From the moment she appears on screen, it's clear that Lil isn't like the other women of her time. She's bold, resourceful, and unashamed of her goals. The film's plot is as daring as its heroine. Lil sets her sights on her married boss, undeterred by the potential fallout. She uses her wit and charm to break up his marriage, climb the social ladder, and amass wealth and influence, all with a sly grin and a toss of her platinum blonde hair. What made this film truly outrageous, though, was the way it let Lil win. She doesn't face a tragic downfall, nor is she forced to repent for her actions. Instead, she succeeds on her own terms. Audiences were stunned. Women had rarely been portrayed as so unapologetically driven, especially when it came to manipulating the men around them. Critics accused the film of glorifying immoral behavior and warned that it set a dangerous example. Religious leaders organized boycotts and studios scrambled to contain the fallout. Yet, for all the controversy, Red-Headed Woman became a sensation. Harlow's performance was electric, and the film's willingness to defy conventions made it an instant classic. In the end, the outrage it sparked only cemented its place in cinema history, a landmark in the portrayal of women as complex, powerful, and above all, unafraid to seize what they want. The Story of Temple Drake, 1933, and The Unspoken Terrors. Few films from the pre-code era stirred up as much trouble as The Story of Temple Drake. Based loosely on William Faulkner's controversial novel Sanctuary, the movie follows Temple Drake, played by Miriam Hopkins, a young woman who finds herself ensnared by dangerous men and forced to confront unthinkable horrors. What set this film apart wasn't just its willingness to explore dark subject matter. It was the frankness with which it depicted a world in which women were often at the mercy of powerful, unscrupulous men. Temple's journey is harrowing, with the film hinting at crimes and traumas that polite society preferred to ignore. While never showing anything directly, the film's implications were clear enough to leave viewers unsettled. At the time, many critics and moral guardians condemned the movie as irredeemably corrupting. Newspapers published editorials decrying its content. Religious groups demanded bans. Some even argued that the mere existence of such a film would encourage lawlessness and despair. Paramount, the studio behind the film, was forced to defend itself before state censorship boards. Yet, The Story of Temple Drake also drew praise from some quarters for its artistry and bravery. It confronted issues that were all too real for many women, refusing to offer easy answers or tidy resolutions. For this reason, it stands today as one of the most important and most controversial films of its era, a testament to the power of cinema to challenge, provoke, and sometimes outrage. Drug addiction and tragedy in Three on a Match, 1932. Not all of pre-code Hollywood's shocks came from romance or crime. Some came from honest, sometimes brutal, depictions of life's hardships. Three on a Match follows the intertwined fates of three school friends as they grow into adulthood, each choosing a different path. The most harrowing storyline belongs to Anne Dvorak's character, Vivian, whose descent into addiction is depicted with an unflinching realism. In one scene, Vivian is shown neglecting her own child as she spirals further into dependency. The filmmakers didn't gloss over the consequences. Her appearance becomes gaunt, her relationships fray, and her actions become increasingly desperate. This kind of honest depiction of substance abuse was nearly unheard of in mainstream film at the time. Instead of focusing solely on crime or punishment, the movie shows the personal and social costs of addiction. This rawness led to a public outcry. Newspapers condemned the film, and censors demanded cuts. Parents worried that such stories would encourage bad behavior, while others insisted that ignoring these issues was even more dangerous. The controversy only grew after the movie's release, with some theaters refusing to show it. Despite, or perhaps because of, the outrage, Three on a Match is now celebrated as a pioneering work of social realism. It tackled difficult topics with a sensitivity and honesty that set it apart from its peers, proving that cinema could be more than just escapism. It could be a window into life's darkest corners. Barbara Stanwyck and Interracial Romance in the Bitter Tea of General Yin, 1933. In the early 1930s, the idea of an interracial romance on screen was considered deeply taboo by many segments of American society. Yet, The Bitter Tea of General Yin dared to tell the story of an American missionary, played by Barbara Stanwyck, who finds herself drawn to a Chinese warlord while caught in the chaos of civil war. What made the film so controversial wasn't just the romance itself, but the way it refused to treat the relationship as inherently tragic or shameful. Instead, director Frank Capra crafted a sensitive, beautifully shot exploration of love across boundaries, challenging viewers to confront their own prejudices. While Niels Astor, a Swedish actor, played General Yin in makeup, a practice now widely condemned, the film's intentions were surprisingly progressive for its time. Audiences and critics were divided. Some hailed the film as a masterpiece, others decried it as immoral and dangerous. In several American cities, the movie was censored or even banned. Religious leaders and politicians warned that it threatened the social order. Yet despite, or perhaps because of, the controversy, The Bitter Tea of General Yin stands as a milestone in the depiction of complex relationships on screen. It helped lay the groundwork for more honest portrayals of love and difference, even as it faced fierce opposition from those who preferred to look the other way. Hedy Lamarr in Ecstasy, 1933. Our countdown concludes with one of the most infamous films of the early 1930s, Ecstasy, starring Hedy Lamarr. Shot in Czechoslovakia, the movie follows a young woman trapped in a loveless marriage who seeks happiness with another man. The film's reputation, however, rests on a handful of scenes that were unprecedented in their day. Ecstasy became world famous and notorious for its use of suggestion and artful cinematography. In one scene, Lamarr's character is shown swimming, the camera lingering with a dreamy sense of intimacy and freedom. In another, her face reflects pure emotion as she experiences joy for the first time. These moments, filmed with sensitivity rather than shock value, broke every rule Hollywood had quietly set. When Ecstasy arrived in the United States, the response was explosive. Religious groups condemned it as obscene, and censors quickly moved to ban or heavily edit the film. In some places, it was never shown at all. Yet, critics praised its artistry, and Lamarr herself would later become a legend, not just for her beauty, but for her brilliance as an inventor, and her willingness to take creative risks. The outrage over Ecstasy helped fuel the drive for stricter controls over what could be shown in American theaters. But the film's legacy endures. It remains a testament to the power of suggestion, the beauty of cinematic expression, and the never-ending tension between art and the boundaries society sets. And there you have it, 10 moments that didn't just break the rules, they rewrote them. These stories from pre-code Hollywood remind us that film has always been about more than entertainment. It's about challenging society, sparking debate, and opening eyes. If you enjoyed this look into Hollywood's wildest era, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from the silver screen. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What moment shocked you most? Until next time, keep questioning, keep watching, and keep the conversation alive.